Embracing age with pride and utilizing one's experience to empower other women is a noble endeavor indeed. Older women undoubtedly possess a wealth of wisdom and life experience that deserves respect and recognition. However, societal attitudes towards aging and women's roles can often be challenging to navigate. To foster respect for older women and their experiences, it's essential to challenge and dismantle patriarchal systems that devalue women as they age. This involves promoting narratives that celebrate the wisdom and contributions of older women rather than dismissing them as irrelevant or invisible. As women, embracing our age with pride involves reframing societal notions of beauty and worth. It means recognizing that our value extends far beyond superficial markers of youthfulness and embracing the depth and richness that comes with lived experience. To use our experience to teach and lift other women, we must first acknowledge and honor our own journeys. This involves reflecting on our experiences, both the triumphs and the challenges, and recognizing the lessons that they have taught us. Sharing our stories openly and honestly can inspire and empower other women to embrace their own paths and navigate life's complexities with courage and resilience. Furthermore, actively supporting and mentoring younger women is crucial in creating a supportive and inclusive community. By sharing our knowledge, offering guidance, and lending a listening ear, we can help uplift and empower the next generation of women leaders. In advocating for women's rights and challenging patriarchal systems, it's essential to amplify the voices of women of all ages. By speaking out against injustice and inequality, we can work towards creating a more equitable and inclusive society for women of every generation. Today on She Became Visible 513, we will be embracing age with pride and using our experience to empower other women. We will be interviewing Reverend Carla, who at over the age of 60 took on the challenge of TikTok to bring to light the injustice that involves patriarchal systems. She highlights LGBTQ plus issues. She highlights Christian nationalism. She especially highlights patriarchal systems. So please join me today on She Became Visible 513 and lend your voice. Please comment. Let us know what you think, or more importantly, tell your story. We are accepting applications for women to tell their stories on She Became Visible, and we invite you to do so. So please join me at 10 a.m. Mountain Time, She Became Visible 513. And here we are. Let me get rid of that. Good morning. I hope you are joining me today. If you're not joining me right this very second, I hope you will remember that it's 10 a.m. on Sunday morning and you will rush quickly to join this conversation. So I got that weird mirror thing, so everything is backwards. So this is going to bug me because it's not even. Anyway, I don't have time for that because I have a show that I think is going to go over an hour today, because I was able to interview Reverend Carla, and I'm going to show that interview with my co-host Lila. And Lila, and one of the funnest things was I was able to introduce Lila to Reverend Carla. And so I'm going to get her input as a new person who was not familiar with her work. But I'm anxious to hear her opinion and how it made her feel, and just what her reaction is. So I'm going to show you my interview with Reverend Carla. We're going to bring on Lila, and we're going to talk about what she had to say. So let me bring in Lila. Hello.
Hey, hello.
How are you?
Oh, I'm a bit frazzled this morning. I didn't wake up when I was supposed to. My alarm, I guess I didn't set it. Anyway, I'm here.
Oh, you know what? That is my dream, is to oversleep an alarm. Because right now my alarm system is like, oh yes, of course it's 2:14 in the morning. Why is my body set at 2:14 in the morning? Now I have to say that also means I'm also going to bed about 8:30 or 9. So I'm getting my good 8 hours in. It's just that, I'm kind of like,
explains it.
Be one of those people that like wakes up and says, oh my gosh, it's 7.
No, it was more like 9:30.
Oh, no.
All week long, I had been up till 2, 3, 4 in the morning working on one of my other jobs, and it finally caught up to me. Let's put it that way. So I'm here though. I made it.
Oh my gosh! Thank you so much.
There's a reason.
I thought of you yesterday. I was at the Fountain Hills Art Festival, and I found this lady who I am going to get on our show because she is an absolute hoot. I mean, she makes earrings predominantly, but also pins out of fabric. She takes fabric and she lacquers it, and then she bends it and then adds charms and things like that and makes the most.
Goodness.
And if she wants a shiny fabric, she uses swimsuit. Or if she wants shiny earrings like metallic, she'll use a swimsuit fabric. I bought this amazing pin. She's Chinese and she lives in San Francisco, and she makes the beautiful Asian influence. And anyway, I bought this pin, and she said those rolls in this pin are from a kimono. And I just thought of you.
Cool.
My gosh, you and your fabric,
Yeah, we should collaborate.
Yeah, seriously. But anyway, I'm going to start the show off, and we're going to get going with Reverend Carla. And when you want to like stop and go, but I will stop and we'll comment. We'll talk about the things that she has to say. But let's go ahead and just get started. All right, here we go.
You're wearing a sweater that was selected for you by the people in this room from a pile of stuff.
Give me a full ballerina skirt and a hint of saloon, and I'm on board.
I can't go back.
Welcome to the She Became Visible podcast. I'm your host, Renee Steelman. This podcast is my story. It's your story. It's our story. It's all the stories of all the women who one day knew that it was time to remember who they were, who they are, and stand up and be seen.
Good morning. Thank you for joining me today on She Became Visible. I am so over the moon excited about my guest today. And I want to give you a little preview of coming attractions. I don't remember how I found Reverend Carla, which pretty much is the story of my life. I mean, I look at books that I've read and podcasts that I've listened to. And then when I go to tell someone about it, I'll be, I don't know how I found this person. I don't know how I found this book. But, one thing leads to another. It's the whole rabbit hole thing. But I believe I found Reverend Carla on TikTok. And the first thing that drew me to her, of course, was that she was on TikTok and she was like my age. It's like, yes. And she even dances sometimes. So it's like, yes, I just was so thrilled. But her message was more important than that. And the things that she had to share. And primarily, I'm going to let her tell her story because I just think it's so profound. And it correlates with my story as far as becoming unchurched because of the patriarchy that seems to dominate most religions on this earth. And it's funny because I will reference, and I will tell Reverend Carla, if any of you have listened to Britt Hartley's No Nonsense Spirituality, if you've listened to her last post, she goes through every single religion, Buddhism, Islam, I think everything, every religion that there is here on the earth. And she talks about how it started with the man. This is how he treated women. This is where his spirituality went. And this is what they truly thought of the value of women in each one of these religions, including Buddhism. And it was just so profound. But regardless, I don't want to take up too much time chatting. So let me just give you a little preview of coming attractions, and then I'm going to bring Reverend Carla on. So here we go.
Good morning, beautiful souls. Now, you know I would come here to talk about the He Gets Us commercials last night. And trust me, I had the same reaction you did. But I want you to think about something. Those commercials are not there to change our mind. They know we see through the hypocrisy. They know we know. They are the source of all the anti-LGBTQIA plus legislation. We know that Hobby Lobby is funding anti-LGBTQIA plus legislation. We know that they're the ones that are causing all of these radical laws against abortion. We know all this. Those commercials are intended for Christians. Now, if you go out and just go spend a few minutes out in TikTok land and look at how many evangelical Christians don't like those commercials. They're flat out telling you that's not Jesus. Jesus never washed the feet of sinners. They're going off on them. This is about a rebranding to the moderate Christian, because they know that they're out in progressive Christian land. There are people who don't know what to do.
Okay, let me stop it right there. That is okay, and let me stop it right there. So did you have a reaction? Did you watch any of the Super Bowl?
I didn't watch the Super Bowl. I was at work that day.
Oh,
The whole day.
Well,
yeah. So I didn't watch. So I didn't even see the commercials she's talking about.
Okay.
You have to take that one.
Yeah, I didn't talk. I didn't watch the football game, obviously, but I came in and out. You know, my husband and a friend were watching it, and I would come in and out. And I happened to catch that commercial, and I had already listened to a lot of stuff, so I already knew that that there was a Christian evangelical Christian nationalism move going on. So when I saw that commercial, I wasn't surprised, because I knew Hobby Lobby is putting millions of dollars behind this evangelical movement. And I thought, well, now there's two stores I can't shop at anymore. I can't shop at Walmart and I can't shop at Hobby Lobby. You know, and it's like, but oh well, I'm sure I'll survive. But I love her take on it. And it's amazing how many of the post-evangelical people on TikTok have made comments about that commercial and who it was geared towards. And so she's really the one that woke me up. Were you aware of the Christian nationalism movement?
No. This is not in my wheelhouse, mainly because I'm not very political, but also, you know, Christianity is really a different thing than Mormonism.
Yeah.
And, you know, they used to tell us all the time, you Mormons don't worship the same God. You don't have the same Jesus that we have. And I think, what are you talking about? Jesus is Jesus.
Yeah.
What do you mean? How can you say that? So I didn't see the commercial. Can you kind of break it down? What was the thing that was happening?
It was a Jesus, or no, it was actually people washing the feet of other people, but you knew it was a Jesus reference. And I think there was some scriptures things going on above it, but so they would show people and it would be like the Christian washing the Muslim person's foot, or the, you know, Hispanic person washing the white person's foot, or whatever. But it was like people that are kind of tribal going and saying, no, I will serve you. You are my brother, or this type of thing. And so it really stirred up a lot of people. It was really interesting. But knowing that, I think one of the biggest problems was people knew that these commercials were millions of dollars. And so their thing was, really, that's what you're going to spend the donation money that people are in their plates and passing around. You're going to spend it on a Super Bowl commercial. So that there was a lot of that. And then there was a lot of misunderstanding of who did Jesus wash the feet of his disciples. He didn't wash the feet of sinners. And it's like, so it was just one of those ones that just kind of got everybody up in a brouhaha. So anyway, yeah. So let's go on. That is just an example of how articulate and educated, and the messages that she gives on her TikTok and Instagram and whatnot are just well studied, well backed up with data, and they really relate to people like me and other people that have left a church or a systematic religion because of the patriarchy, the misogyny, and whatnot, and also the reinventing of Christianity. So I'm going to stop talking and bring Reverend Carla on and have her introduce herself, and let's get this conversation going. So, there she is.
Hello there. I am so honored to be here. Thank you for this time.
Thank you so much. I think I found you. I don't know where. I know I found you on TikTok, but I remember the most profound one that you gave for me that really stuck with me was you not only talked about leaving a systematic church because of the patriarchy, but also you referenced the culture and the era that you were brought up in. And I remember I was walking through the streets. My husband and I moved to Arizona about 5 years ago. Previous to that, we were in Oregon, and we had gone back for some reason. And so I was walking the streets of Lake Oswego, and they have these cute little shops, and I'm just going from shop to shop, and I've got my earbuds in, and I'm listening to you talk. And you're talking about the time that you would love to go to a coffee shop, and you would go into this coffee shop and find solitude and whatnot. And somebody came up to you and correct me if I got the story wrong. And they said, you'd be a lot cuter if you just smile. And you remember thinking that, of course, because this is how we were trained, of course you went, you smiled, because that's what we were trained to do. And I remember going, that's it. That's, and then you've seen all the other things where people are saying so much about femininity and how far we've come. And I'm like, I'm only 70 years old. I remember going into a bank and not being able to get a credit card, not being able to open up a checking account, not being able to go and buy a car on my own or whatever, because I didn't have a job, I didn't have an income, and I was dependent on my husband. So he had to sign for me. This was in the 70s. It wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
So I just think that people don't understand that people that grew up in our era, we were pretty much right there with the Leave It to Beaver whole persona. We also were told to make sure you look nice when your husband came home so that he wouldn't have an affair at the office. And but then you mix that with a Christianity, and, in the Mormon church, when I got married, we went through a temple ceremony. And part of the temple ceremony was vowing and bowing our heads and saying, yes, that we would obey our husbands, that we would honor them, and that we would go through them to speak to God. And so, and of course, as a 20-year-old or 21-year-old, you're like, yeah, okay, sure. Yeah. And I mean, I remember even as a young girl, when I was preparing to get married, thinking, going to be a housewife pretty soon. I'm going to do laundry. I'm going to iron. This is going to be so fun, And I mean, it didn't take very long. I mean, because that's not my personality for me to go, yeah, I don't iron. I don't know where I got that idea.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. But tell us your journey, because I love the fact that you are ordained, you went through seminary, and just tell us where where Reverend Carla came from.
Well, thank you. Thank you again for having me here, and I'd be honored. And I love the fact that you just went right for it and dove in and gave me, showed the one video that is probably one of the most, I would say, conversationally with triggers there, because not only am I talking about faith, I'm talking about politics, which I'm not afraid to do so on my platform in any way, shape, or form. Not that I saw that at the beginning, because at the beginning, I truly thought I was leaving church because of my conflicts with faith. And just real quickly, I was raised Southern Baptist, raised by a very heavily influenced by a Southern Baptist grandmother who I adored and still miss to this day. And so being able to also reconcile the fact that I did leave that faith, but also heal to the point where I can circle back and have gratitude for what she instilled in me as far as seeking spirituality. Because I think that's what each generation can do. If we leave a gift of wisdom and yearning to try to be a better version of ourselves, then that will impact humanity. So the places where she may have gotten wrong in what she believed about her faith are the things that we continue to correct if we're open to that kind of change. So that was some of the reconciliation I did with my religious heritage. But I didn't even think about patriarchy being a part of what I was deconstructing from. And you and I had a conversation at the beginning about how this whole thing about patriarchy, how it has impacted us, and how we, the things that you influenced that maybe you didn't understand that you were, quote, deconstructing from, even though that's not a word that we really like to put about how we're defining what's happening in our lives. So when I first started to leave, my conflict, it felt like it was a spiritual conflict, even though I can look back now and see that it absolutely was about the structure of organized religion. But I thought when I first left, I brought my baggage with me. So I thought I was a bad Christian. I thought I was going to go to hell. I immediately started looking for another church because it was just it had to be about that church. But luckily, and I say that now because at the time it really hurt, luckily I was indoctrinated in such a high control religion that they had sent letters to area churches warning them about me.
Okay, I have to stop right there. Is that not like, duh?
Yeah. Wow. Talk about control and manipulation.
I mean, I know that in our church, bishops will call other bishops to say, hey, so-and-so just moved into the ward, or they have annotations on the records saying, they obviously don't put the annotations where it's supposed to be. This person is a problem.
Yeah.
They don't put that down. But but other bishops will say, hey, this family just moved in. Is there anything I need to know about them or something like that? But to send out letters, and now
she must have really burned some bridges somehow when she left. Like, what did she say? What did she do that made them so upset?
I think just disengaging was enough, But now you're about 10 years younger than I am. And were you familiar with the whole, I can't get any credit, I can't get a loan?
Oh yeah.
Did you experience
that? Happened with me too. I mean, I got married. This is embarrassing to say. And anyway, I was not quite 19 when I got married. I was 2 weeks shy of
your 19th birthday.
But you think I could get a loan for anything? Get a car, anything? No. Yeah. It was my husband had to co-sign, it all went through him because he was only 22, but he had a little more credit than I had because he had bought a car. Yeah. And I had never owned a car. So yes, I remember those things where they're like, girl, you have no clout. So you're going to have to find someone to sign for you, your daddy or your husband,
Yeah, I know. And now my granddaughters, they have debit cards. Yeah. They have their own checking account. Yeah. They have money coming in that they deposit. I don't even know if at 16 they have a credit rating, but anyway, it's, people think of the suffragette movement but they don't even understand with that even for Black women, that was not even until the 60s that they got the vote. Right. So the 60s, police, the clothing you have on today, Missy, is a replication of what we were wearing in the 60s.
Exactly.
So, it's not that long ago. But anyway, so let's go on with her. She's just amazing, I'll tell you.
Yeah. She's
saying that I was such a bad person. They warned them. And so I was not welcome at area evangelical churches. And I felt it going in. I felt it like somehow they must have known my face and stuff. And I felt that. And I would sit in the parking lots going, okay, did I imagine that? And later having that confirmed that that's exactly what happened from other people who left the church and saying, they sent letters about you, right?
Wow.
But seeing that, because I was still seeking inside my religious heritage the answers to my spiritual path. But what that did was force me into looking at what was it that was untangled? What was it, this thing I was untangling? And that's what I kept that's how I described deconstructing, was I am untangling from something, and I don't know where this is going to lead me, but I'm going to trust the process. So instead of everything that I had known about my spirituality was me being spoon-fed from the pulpit. I did not have any structured education related to religion or biblical studies. So I wanted to learn for myself. And because my husband was supportive of that journey as well and felt that this was going to lead to something, whether it was just for my own healing journey and that would also impact our family, he was very supportive of my returning to college, which is what I did. So the first place I landed was a biblical college, because I thought, Bible, right?
Yeah.
And a year into that, I'm like, I know all this stuff. I do know this stuff. I don't need it through this lens. And then I applied and was accepted into Arizona State University's religious studies. And within the first semester is when I personally lost what I call my spiritual Santa Claus. And what that to me means is that once you are faced with truths that are completely contradictory to what you knew, you can't unknow that. You can.
Okay, I'm going to stop that. I love the fact that she also doesn't like the word deconstruction, but I like when she talks about untangling, and and that's the part where I'm not proud of this at all. I want to be more accepting, and the term giving people space. I want that to be my persona. But when I see people that have left the church, been excommunicated, but then they come back and they get rebaptized, I'm like, I don't know how you can unsee what you saw.
Yes.
When she made that comment that she couldn't unsee what she saw. And that to me is like we talked about before, how many things do you have to go, oh, well.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
I really struggle with that one. I know some people that left and came back, and what they had to do mentally in order to do that was say, I know, this wasn't true and that wasn't true, and the true things, I get that. But I just love going and sitting there and singing the hymns. I just love seeing my friends there. I just get such a warm, fuzzy feeling just being with my community. And I think, so you'll just let all of the dogma just go in and out. Like, how do you do that? How I can't do it. Because for me, I was a member because it was true.
Right.
The social construct of it. It's true. And that's why I'm here.
Right.
I didn't even hang out and talk to friends after. I was like, I get there, I did my service. For us, it started out being an hour and then an hour later, but then an hour, all of a sudden it's 3 hours and then it's down to 2 hours. But anyway, it was not about the social aspect. So I wonder how they do that, but they do.
Yeah. I just love when you find people that have left another high demand religion, just like she said, she grew up Baptist and had a grandmother that she loved until her grandmother passed, and appreciates so much what her grandmother taught her. But she can't deny what she saw. Yeah. And I loved hearing her say that. All right, let's go back.
choose to turn away from it, but you can't unknow it. So that had me really literally physically on the floor crying, because then I needed to grieve the parts of me that I knew I was losing. It's like the best way I could describe it is a really, really bad relationship. And when you get confirmation that it's really bad, there's almost a relief, but there's also sorrow for what was. And you realize that you are going to be fundamentally changed. And so that is, and I want to pause here and also say that this deconstructing, which is the power word that has been chosen to describe us reconciling our faith and healing from any kinds of religious experience. This isn't about where you land. It's not, some people do go back to church. Some people go all the way to atheism, but it's about releasing things that no longer serve your highest good. And for each person, that's going to be a different journey. It's going to be different depending on where you started and where your calling is. Because for me, I'm still much a spiritual person. So I do believe in these innate gifts that we have that kind of compel us into the world to find the places where we can serve our highest good and leave some kind of footprint that leaves this place a better place because we were here. So that journey then took me on to seminary, which was another conflict because once again, I'm like, the only seminary I ever heard about was the ones that are through the Christian religious construct. And by that time, after going to studying world religions and doing that work, I knew that that was not going to serve me. And finding interfaith and inner spiritual seminary was like a lifeline for me. That was like obviously the next journey for me. I just didn't know it at the time when I started looking. So that's how I found One Spirit Interfaith Spiritual Seminary. Interfaith means that you have a respect and an acknowledgement that world religions and traditions all have some meaning and somehow point from their context are pointing people to an understanding of something. Yes, they can have something that's intricately flawed, but it's not ours to judge if it's not part of our religious heritage. It's just saying that there's different ways that people can come together and try to understand the divine. Inner Spiritual says that you can have a spirituality. It does exist outside the construct or the framework of organized religion. So that's really where I fall, because now, having gone through my deconstructing journey, I now am an unchurched, non-conforming, spiritual but not religious person. And I say non-conforming because I still hold on to elements of my Christian heritage because I did the work for way too long not to hold on to it. But I'm non-conforming, meaning I don't make my identity or what I believe about the divine or where I'm going or what salvation looks like contingent upon my beliefs. It's more about our spirituality is more about our human experience and looking at the lessons of Jesus and how they can be applied to the human experience and not be hyper-focused about what salvation looks like for us. So that's how I ended up here, and then felt like, all right, let's start writing on social media and see where that lands us. And I think that is when I really started making the connection. I went through all of that before I started realizing. It was when I first started posting on Facebook and got hit really hard by a lot of offended men who kept it's like they were waiting on me, and it was just really vile and vitriolic. And yet I was still trying to engage with them and validate my presence. So I actually paused for about 6 months and said, who am I? Why am I doing this? Why do I feel like I have to over-explain and exhaust myself? Because I'm not even talking to the people that I want to talk to. I am trying to find validation on people that I left behind. And that's when I started to unpack patriarchy and understand how it's still showing up in my life and how and it was about that time that the man at the coffee shop said, you would be much prettier if you would smile. And I automatically smiled and enraged, like holding my driving home going like, I cannot believe I did that.
Yeah.
Because we don't realize how many places that that we are still holding on to patriarchy and how it has wounded us, but also how it, in some ways, we internalize it and think that we owe men in our lives or men in a place of authority an excuse for our existence, that somehow they have to approve of it. So once I was able to work through that, the gloves were off, and I went viral on TikTok. The voice that came out of that was much stronger. And that's when I realized I'm going to help people reclaim their spirituality. I'm going to help people who want to remain unchurched and find a spiritual but not religious path. I want them to feel like they don't have to carry the guilt that they brought out of church with them. And I'm going to talk about the dangers of Christian nationalism and why it's important that we understand that that connection with religion, religious patriarchy, and our governmental and institutional patriarchy is blending to create something that is a very real threat to our democracy. Yes. So that's the voice I bring to the airwaves. And my first book will come out the end of this year. It's called Deconstructing, Leaving Church and Finding Faith. So that's my bio in a nutshell.
That's amazing. Okay, I'm gonna go back to us here for a little bit. I love what I love about her. You know, when you talk about any kind of an organization, you talk about team. You have to have a team. You can't do it all by yourself. And you know, whether that's just secretaries, industrial, whatever, nobody can survive by themselves. And what I have found with, I think, and tell me if you found this, because we grew up in this black and white religion where we're true, you're not. We have this, you don't. This is the truth, like it or leave it. We don't care. Even in last October conference, you know, 98-year-old, 99-year-old man sat there and said, it's just the truth. People don't like to hear the truth, but it's just the truth. And you decide, where do you want to live in the next life? Do you want to live in heaven, or do you want to live, alone in another kingdom? It's your choice. That's what we grew up. So I also, just in my culture, that I grew up in a family that was very black and white. Like I said, I would go someplace with my mom, and she'd see the kid carrying out your groceries. She'd say, stupid blue hair. And she'd just get mad. I'm like, wow, that's a lot of emotion over that kid's blue hair. I mean, it's like, what do you care? But when she said that thing about the understanding who we were and how it all boils back down to the patriarchy. I don't know. I mean, have you had you should smile more, or the condescending?
Yeah. Well, just the other day. So I work up at Sundance Ski Resort in a store called the General Store, which is just kind of it's a high-end gift shop, I guess you could say. And this guy trots in with his buddy, and he looks at me and he says, hello, princess. And I guess I was supposed to just fly and melt. And,
yeah.
Me?
Yeah.
But instead, I didn't. I looked at him and I said, I'm not a princess. Why would you call me that? And he goes, oh, excuse me. I didn't mean to offend. I was just giving you a compliment. And I said, don't call women princesses.
Yeah.
That's just so condescending. I said, I would prefer if you just said hello.
Yeah.
You don't have to add that to it, because what that does, I know what it's like a natural thing for these men, but they don't realize that it's a condescending. What they're doing is they're trying to get us to respond to them as this gallant guy on a white steed who's going to come and swoop them away, and that we have no choice in the matter, that it'll just happen. And if he calls me princess, I'm going to now want him to continue to like me, and I'm going to play into that. And I just didn't do it. And my girlfriend who worked with me there was like, Lila, you were kind of, and I said, I'm sorry. That he crossed the line. I don't like that. It's that patriarchy that I grew up with. And my dad was a patriarch of the home. And I remember when I was young, thinking that was a good thing.
Yeah.
Until I realized, no, wait a minute, my mom never gets to speak.
Yeah.
Like she never does. He takes over, and she'll just agree even if she doesn't agree.
Right. Right.
So, it's toxic to women.
Yeah. Yeah. And I thought that was so interesting that the people that responded the most when she decided to get on Facebook were the men.
Men.
And it goes back to, I've noticed in the biker world, you've got all these tough bikers out there.
Right.
And their version is baby girl.
Baby
Hey,
girl.
baby girl, or honey or sweetie.
Honey,
And,
yes.
and I'm like, that is the what is the word? Infantilizing we as women. So we are children. They will take care of us. Like you say, they will, hey, little girl, let me take care of you, and that used to be in the church. My thing was my bride. These men would stand up and they would say, my bride. I'm like, you're 85. Okay.
Yeah. She's not your bride anymore.
Yeah.
And it's like we are relegated to being something that they're adorning themselves with,
Yes.
We're like the arm candy or something.
Yeah. No, it's definitely, you're definitely a possession. Even, it's interesting because I'm in the middle of this Christian nationalism right now. And most of the people, my husband and I went to a movie last night called God and Country, and it's all about Christian nationalism.
You're so brave to go right into that.
Yes. Well, it's because I have it in my family so strongly, and because they're Trump supporters, and they don't even, like you were saying, when not even being aware of it. My brother is a huge Trump supporter, and I said, but I really have a hard time with the Christian nationalism. He goes, what's that?
Yeah.
Because he's not a Christian, he doesn't see it.
Right.
And anyway, it was amazing, but it's definitely a patriarchal, Southern Baptist, evangelical, men screaming. And it's very, very scary. And I'm going to show a clip later on about that too. But yeah, so let's go on. But yeah, it's right there. She just points it out so well. And, I think the interesting thing about the Christian nationalism is, I scoot past me. We don't need to listen to me talk.
Not that I'm comparing your husband to my dog, but they both are making noises.
That's right. Yeah.
So there's a situation where an Indiana pastor was going to have to come forth and let his congregation know that he had a relationship with a minor. This ended up what he wanted to call it an affair. So the reason why I'm calling it this is because exactly what he was saying, the words he was using. So he gets up and he talks about his transgressions. The woman, who is now a woman, she's in her 30s, gets up and says, no, I was a child. And I don't want to trigger anybody in your audience. She went on to talk about the violations of her time and how he had groomed her. In the end, she went on to tell her story with one person standing beside her, and she told the story from the congregation. In the end, the entire congregation goes forth to pray over the pastor, while 2 or 3 young women support the woman in the back. Because he's going to take a break and he needs to get right with God and read, because he is a man of God. And just 3 or 4 women, young women, are back consoling and comforting the victim. If that isn't patriarchy, because I think going back to what you were just saying about Joseph Smith, we don't realize how many places patriarchy has taught us to look the other way, right, or numb out about some of the behavior that patriarchy has taught us to forgive or to just ignore. And if you can tie it to it being the lineage of the divine, then you have no choice but to forgive. And so everything that you know about the forgiveness, you carrying guilt, you carrying shame, versus a man of God he's flawless. But yet if he is found to have a transgression, it's because of the sacrifices he makes for the congregation. And then how that transfers down into your life in so many places. When you look out into positions of authority, you can see how it impacts the way you look at political leaders. How you look in your home, and how oftentimes it's the women who carry the guilt for others' faults and transgressions, because that's what we've been trained to do. So when something happens, a tragedy happens in your life, or somebody violates you in some way, there's often this response of, what could I have done differently?
Right.
That's an indoctrinated response. That is not a normal, healthy response for a person who has and should have the right to hold on to the victim, not in a way that perpetually hurts our lives, but to claim that so that we can then heal from it and hold someone else accountable. We're not taught how to do that. We see it in the criminal system when a woman reports assaults to religious structures. And when you start to peel back how many places in your life that has impacted you, it can leave you feeling pretty wobbly, because it's like, wait a minute, I'm completely immersed in it. And when you see how women have internalized it, and how then they use it towards others,
Right.
to say, okay, Renee, you say you're 70 and you're wearing that bright lipstick. Do you think that that's really appropriate for a woman your age?
Yeah.
And you know that there are women out there who have no idea that they are weaponizing a truth that they're holding on to, that they feel then they're entitled to judge you, which, by the way, you're fabulous. And I'm looking at you thinking, oh my goodness, how am I going to, I need to more for giving me permission to step into my authenticity that's crying out as well.
Well, it's funny you would say that. I'm going to skip past that too. But I don't know. Oh my gosh. I mean, Lila, we could be here for 4 hours. Good thing you slept in, because it's going to take a while here. But there is and I'm going to do a clip and put this on TikTok, but there's a pastor in Tennessee, I believe, that old 85-year-old guy, just like all of the people that are in positions of authority in the LDS church.
Yeah.
And he literally stood up in his sermon behind his pulpit and said to the congregation that, I took my wife down to the shopping center and I said, look at this, look at these girls in shorts. I mean, you don't even see girls in dresses anymore, like they used to, long pants and dresses. They're all in shorts. And I have to tell you, girls, if I was on a jury and you were raped, I would say you let that man go free, because men are just men. And I was like, okay, people are upset at that because he has that Southern accent. He has that typical evangelical hammer slamming down on the podium. But when Dallin Oaks, very distinctly in his Chicago quiet lawyer voice, says you're walking pornography, it's the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so that's the patriarchy that like she said, there are women carrying the water for patriarchy. They go along and they're like, yeah, that's what, and I like, in the beginning, I like how she said that her testimony and knowledge was spoon-fed to her.
Yeah. Talk about spoon-fed. I mean, we as Mormons, they get us up there at that podium, but how old are we?
Yeah, 3. Yeah.
Little wee kids, and they are standing right next to us saying, I believe the church, I have a testimony, Joseph Smith prophet, and we repeat it. Yeah. But I want to tell a really quick story that kind of explains this in a way. My mother, who I love, my mom, she's no longer with us, so please know I adore my mother to death. She was a victim of this whole system.
Exactly.
But one time her granddaughter, my niece, came to the door. I was at the house with my mom, and the niece came to the door and rang the doorbell, and she was wearing a little mini skirt, and she was probably 16. And I mean, it wasn't extremely, it wasn't showing anything. It was just a mini skirt. And after she got done talking to my mom and went away, my mom looks at me and she said, that girl's asking to get raped.
Oh,
Yeah. And I said, Mom, no one asks to get raped. No woman. And she said, Lila, you know what I mean. She has no business wearing that mini skirt around. And I said, you know what? You cannot correlate what she's wearing to what happens when women get raped. Women get raped wearing, what are those?
Hijabs.
Yes.
Burqas. Yeah.
Women get raped wearing all kinds of clothing.
Yeah.
There is no correlation to that.
Yeah.
And for you to say that she's asking to get raped is extremely offensive to me.
Yeah.
So we had this little argument going for a minute. But she just was repeating what the dogma that she had internalized.
Yeah.
And didn't see that there was a problem there.
Right. Yeah. And when people come back, and I'm very lucky, probably because I'm not, really out there that much. But I haven't gotten really bad trolling yet. I've had a few people say, get a life, things like that. But, to have people say quotes that they've heard over the pulpit,
like that can help.
Yeah. And you go like, I watched that conference talk too. Okay.
Yeah,
That's not coming from you. That was, Uchtdorf with his doubt your doubts.
You're right.
And so you just repeated that. And then you think you're somehow very profound because you just repeated what you heard at conference. That's
Right.
called being spoon fed. And I get it. We all don't, none of us are living in a bubble. None of us are sitting there going, does the sun go around the earth or the earth go around the sun?
No.
I know, we're not doing that. We're all listening and hearing and swallowing things. But they say it with such testimony, I think. It's just such surety, But yeah, and I love when she said that about the congregation gathering around the man that had taken advantage of a young girl rather than the girl. I was like, isn't that what we're doing? Aren't we rallying around, President Hinckley right now, who didn't report that the bishop that had molested 2 children, the ward is told to rally around him, to pray for him. And the church, it's the exact, nobody is talking about the 2 children.
No.
This girl, her 2 brothers, what happened to her family. Nobody's talking about that.
You know what I hate is when they say, well, that was years ago.
Yes.
As if that means there was no impact.
Yeah.
It just it's infuriating. That it's so backward. And it's the patriarchy is doing that. They're saying, oh, but let's pray for Brother Johnson because Brother Johnson, needs our faith and love and forgiveness.
Yeah.
We're not even going to look at the victim. They're just who cares? Yeah. We're going to
know. Especially with children, such a misunderstanding that things that happened to you as a child, you should be able to get over as an adult.
Oh yeah, it's no big deal. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. Go run them.
There's something about the SA too that is taken as, it's almost like, oh, I punched you in the face, but whatever, no big deal. They honestly don't see the traumatic,
what it does.
What it does, because it's almost like, well, it's just sex. I mean, get over it. It was just sex, And so it's like, okay, I don't know I'm not a psychologist. I don't understand how this works. I've always wondered why that's always a part of pillaging and war. Why do you go into a war-torn country, you shoot everybody and you rape the women? Yeah. Why is that part of, that's the power and the violence. And they don't think of it as sex. It's more like, whatever, I punched you in the face. Yes.
It's like the man has taken over the whole city and raped and pillaged the women because they're dominating whoever was there. And the women, of course we're going to have sex with the women. I mean,
that's just whatever, and then it was like, oh, that was really bad. I'm sorry. Get over that. Yeah.
And it's and when it happens to children, all you have to do is talk to some victims. Oh, I mean, it didn't happen to me, but I have many friends who it did happen. And let me tell you, they are train wrecks. Yeah. They cannot get a handle. Their lives are out of control. And it all stems back to what happened to them as children.
Right.
At the hands of men.
Yeah.
And those men skipped on down the path like nothing happened and left this carnage behind, which is so tragic because they don't even think twice about what the damage is, but we're supposed to forgive them. I just don't understand it. When I don't believe anymore, I'm just going to go on a little rant, just a short one. But after deconstructing Mormonism, I also went ahead and deconstructed some other things. And one of them was the concept of forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that many, many things are forgivable, but there are some things that I don't believe we should forgive.
Yeah.
I think we should, and people say, well, then you're just carrying that weight around.
Mm-hmm.
No, you're not carrying the weight around. You are demanding justice from something that happened that is unforgivable to you.
Right.
And you don't have to walk around sad, but regain your power.
Yeah.
And realize that you do not have to look the other way and say, oh, it's okay, I forgive you.
Yeah.
And be this docile thing. We need to maintain our power as women, as equals, and not allow these men to dictate to us our place.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. And I'll talk a little bit more about that too, because she's just so profound. So let's just go on with that.
I just, he had no control.
Every one of the stories about women in the Bible have been rewritten to emphasize the patriarchal role, to somehow support the role of the patriarchy. I'm going to start doing some content on that as well, because I think there's oftentimes a lot of times when people are trying to deconstruct, you're holding on to some of those stories like, well, what about, even though oftentimes I teach about the Bible as being the writers of the Bible, I believe would be aghast to think that we are holding people hostage to a literal interpretation of that scripture. Because even those writers understood that they wrote in largesse and hyperbole for a reason. They made the stories magnificently huge and outrageous to catch your attention and help you remember them. And it was an invitation for us to say, let's continue the story. Please continue the story, because here's how we understand spirituality now. Here's how we understand where we are, and we're trying to figure out these things around us. So help continue to tell the story of what's happening. But as soon as people got a hold of it and said, well, we can make this really powerful if we change the narrative. So, I've got people in my family who believe that the King James Bible is the only Bible that matters, which to me is, it's the same people who say you must take everything that's written in the Bible literally, even though the King James Bible wasn't written until the 1600s. So how can that even be? You can't even reconcile the two if that Bible wasn't written, and it was clearly written and retranslated and negotiated to do nothing but support monarchical rule. Right. And if that isn't entrenched in patriarchy, I don't know what is. Yeah. So you have to look at the Bible through that lens. And so anytime somebody comes to me and wants to say, well, Paul wrote that women shouldn't teach. Yeah. We're just not going to be held hostage anymore by that. I don't debate anybody. I leave all that up to Dan McClellan to do, because I want people to understand that you do not have to be held hostage. The fact that you're trying to negotiate where you are with your spirituality to people who have weaponized that book to the point that they believe that you are less than for not believing like they do, is not, you can never reconcile that starting point. You will never be able to reconcile the fact that that's going to be an equal playing field. So do not agree to have that conversation. If this is about your spirituality, then you tell them what the starting point is going to be. And oftentimes then they won't want to talk to you because they believe that they have the right to say, this is the way we're going to have this conversation. And it's going to start with the book of Romans. And we're going to say what Paul said about you and why you are less than a man.
Right.
I'm not going to start there. That's not fair. But what you also said about a woman's proximity to power, and what I often teach about is carrying water for the patriarchy.
Yes.
And that is exactly what that is. So even though I am content, what that means is I am content with the fact that I will never rise to that level of power. The power that I get by being in proximity, like you said, the pastor's wife, that gets me so close to that power that I'm willing to dump water on the people who are on this structure. I'm going to carry it up the system, dump it on people who may be trying to get up to my power or threaten it in some way, because this is just a good life. And I'm going to keep my proximity to power and ensure my husband stays in power. Mm-hmm. So they then become a tool in the patriarchy. And oftentimes I'll talk about, like the absence. And this is something that I know that I think we were going to talk a little bit about in this podcast about the divine feminine and the crone. The absence of the divine feminine, the absence of that's being suffocated by toxic masculinity right now. When I talk about that, people will say, what are you talking about? You've got Marjorie Taylor Greene, you've got Nancy Pelosi, you've got Lauren Boebert, you've got Marsha Blackburn, all these people in there. No, even Nancy is part of a patriarchal structure. Mm-hmm. They're part of it. They're working in cooperation with it. Divine feminine isn't about saying that being masculine is wrong. Divine feminine is saying that we need to accept the sides of us that are more nurturing and a little bit more diplomatic, that bring in those energies that make things look a little bit more compassionate and empathic, that have nothing to do with gender, but everything to do with an element of us that's in each of us that really is all of that gets suffocated in a patriarchal structure that's entrenched in this toxic masculinity. And that's the other part of it. And you start to, a lot of that is like, wait, I am so lost, because it's so overwhelming to think, but it's also oftentimes people are, they immediately go, oh my God, I'm getting it. I'm getting it. I'm mm-hmm. starting to understand completely what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. But you don't want to overwhelm people to the point where they'll be like, I don't believe any of this.
Right.
In reality, it's our lives. It's just, and people are awakening to it, especially the younger generations.
Mm-hmm. Well, that brings me to the next question. So because you're on TikTok and then also Instagram, do you do Facebook anymore as much? Do you have things that just kind of flow over automatically?
I do. It's just all repurposed content.
Right. Do you find there is a demographic of people that follow you, that you do have a younger generation of women that follow you, or are you finding women in our demographic that are finally, finally a voice for my people? Are you finding that, or when you get comments, do you know of like the general age group of people that are commenting on your posts?
Yes. So it's really interesting, and this might make some people uncomfortable, some of your followers uncomfortable, but I think this is something we should talk about. Mm-hmm. On Facebook, I do have an older audience. Instagram is about 50-50. TikTok is a younger audience, but the demographics are shifting up a little bit. I think more boomers are finding their way to TikTok, but the one thing that I would say, that you would think that I might have an evangelical come in there every once in a while if a Christian wants to come in and try to make a point inside my comments, but the ones who get the most offended is the white woman who's coming in, who thinks that she's deconstructing. Mm-hmm. But I have said something that has struck a nerve about her person, that she wants me to change my thinking, instead of, she does not see the mirror I am offering her, to see that I have been right where you are, and to face that mirror, to say that we exist in a space of privilege, and that we have been taught to wield that privilege in every place that we go in the form of gatekeeping. in the way that we say things about, well, I don't care about being in the same space with LGBTQIA+, but do they have to have public displays of affection? It makes me uncomfortable. That's gatekeeping. That's a patriarchal belief that I have the right to say how communities are going to exist, or how people are going to dress, or how they're going to speak, and what words they will use. You hear that often when it comes to demographics and certain words and dialects that people use depending on what part of the geographical region they are from in America.
Mhm.
And people will say, well, can you speak proper English? Or can you, that is a form of gatekeeping. Now it trends in far beyond women into places where, for instance, it was just not too long ago, a man came into my space and said, I will talk to you when you calm down.
Oh.
Now he's in my space,
Yeah.
dropping comments, and I made a video about it. And I immediately went to that and said, are you really coming to a woman's space and talking? It was like, thank you for doing this. You're healing when you can take something that somebody says and be able to then transpose it and say, let me tell you what this man just did. And why telling you that calming down is actually a control of patriarchy, because he's going to try to come into my space and tell me, put the conditions about how we're going to communicate with each other using a weapon that patriarchy taught him was his to use towards a woman. So when I was able to use that, I had women DMing me saying, I'm sitting here in tears. I always knew I felt so horrible when somebody said that to me, but I didn't know I had the right to do that. I was always felt like that was such a horrible thing to say to me. And now I have the words to say back to somebody when they say that. And then later that man actually reached out and apologized. He said, I never understood how that harms women. Thank you for teaching me. He did.
Wouldn't you like to hear that?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you just once like to hear over the pulpit, we're so sorry. We didn't understand what that sounded like. Or we didn't mean to infantilize, you, or we didn't mean to throw out platitudes to make you feel like, we're just going to pat you on the head and tell you how much we adore you and put you on a pedestal. Even that pastor I was talking about that made that horrible comment, he has been blasted. I mean, every New York Times, Washington Post, he's all over the news. And there was a thing on their letterboard, how in front of the churches they have their signboards.
Yeah.
And they said, Pastor Leonard, I think it's Bobby Leonard, I think is his name, apologizes. He knows he was wrong. We are so sorry. And I thought there'll be a cold day in hell whenever anyone stands up and says, I am so sorry. We did not realize.
They just won't do it.
Yeah.
Not, not the ones that are in now.
No.
It would have to be complete overhaul of humans in the upper, Q15 in order to get that. Now, maybe that new guy they called in who is LGBT kind of.
Yeah.
What is this, Sheeran or no? He's a British guy.
Yeah, Kieran or something.
Kieran. Yeah. Kieran.
Yeah.
But, if they would just say, you know what, I wasn't alive when, blah, blah, blah happened, but I want to apologize for the entire church leadership, for the way that Blacks were treated, or for the way that women have been treated, or LGBTQ. We were wrong. This was wrong. And we want to make an amends with you. And we want to start over and try this again. Can we just change? I mean, what would that do? Remember I think it was Jonathan Streeter did a fake apology from, who was it? I think it was our last Hinckley. I think it was, he was pretending to be Hinckley. Yeah. And did that fake apology in Hinckley's voice.
Yeah.
And people were freaking out because they thought he had done it. but it was all fake. And it was like, dang it, that's the one thing we want. It's the one thing we probably never get.
Yeah. Well, and not only that, but when she's talking about her tone, that is, when a man gets angry and he gets a little bit louder, then he's just being assertive and he's just, he's just standing his ground.
Yeah.
And a woman is always told to calm down and don't get so emotional. And then you see that, like you say, the few women that have been allowed to, present their pre-authorized talk in conference, they use the baby voice. They use the quiet voice because that's acceptable. That's authorized. That makes you sound nurturing and loving and kind. And I used to like Julie, who was the Relief Society president? Julie, what's her face? She gave the talk on coffee. She's
Beck.
Yeah, Julie Beck. I used to love her because I felt like she had a little bit more of an authoritative voice. But then when I heard that coffee talk,
you're like, never mind. Oops.
Yeah. And, Chieko, I love Chieko.
Yeah.
She was, really study presidency. And, some of them, but it's
normal. If they would just talk normal, I would be much more. I used to say, oh, it's a woman speaking. I can't. I got to go in the other room because they're going to do that. My dear brothers and sisters.
Exactly.
I'm so grateful. Just that whole kind of voice. I couldn't even hear the words they were saying. All I could hear was that voice.
Yeah.
And I know why they put it on. It goes back to be sweet, pray. Yeah. That from the fundamentalists, but same thing. Keep sweet.
Absolutely.
That sweet little thing that never raises their voice. And I've noticed that when men, like you said, they're assertive, they're being men. But when a woman does it, she's a bitch.
Yeah.
All of a sudden. So sorry I said the word, but that's what we get called if we have that attitude.
Yeah. I even saw a thing. Did you see that thing? I can't remember if it's on TikTok or not, but there was a pilot landing a plane and he's talking to the air traffic controller, and the air traffic controller says, what are you doing? And he said, well, I'm landing the plane or something. And she said, you asked for a short land and you're doing a 180 degree or something like that. And he's like, I think I know what I'm doing. And she's like, well, you don't know what you're doing because you said you wanted a short land. And I, I'm not a pilot. I don't know airplanes. So people were back and forth. Some people were saying the controller's right. She should, the other one was saying she should be fired and the pilot's always right and blah, 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 this kind of stuff. But I thought the most important thing is she's telling him, you told me you wanted a short landing and that's not what you're doing. If you needed a longer one, you should have told me. And he's cutting her down. And I thought, I'm sorry, there's patriarchy in that. I don't know who's right or wrong, but the way he was talking to her, if that would have been a man in the controlling, he would have said, oh, I meant to say, sorry, dude. Yeah. Hey, bro, I'll do better next time, So no, absolutely. All right, let's go on and listen to this wise woman.
Okay.
That's amazing.
Stay in this space for as long as you want. And if you ever have questions, come in. Now, I haven't talked to him since, but the fact that he reached out and apologized was unbelievable.
Yeah, it's so amazing because you talk about that, and that's I think it was either Tim or somebody else, but they showed a couple of clips of men saying how we can't have women in positions of authority, and it was the whole, like you say, it's like, is it 2024? Are you sure it's not 1953? Are you sure? Because they were saying, we can't have women because they're too nurturous and they want to involve everyone, and they believe in diversity, and they believe in inclusion. And how can you have somebody in power that is so kind to everyone? And then the first thing I thought of was Travis Kelce at the Super Bowl in his coach's face, just yelling at him. And I'm like, yes, that's what we need in authority. Somebody that's just going to chop your head off, because you didn't put him in that play. And I'm like, let's balance that out. But the tone police, I mean, immediately you get that for women is like, well, I didn't like your tone. Mm-hmm. And it's like, or you're just, why are you so angry? I'm like, because you just insulted me. And it's like,
have a conversation. The range of emotions that's available to humans should be utilized. can they all contribute to a productive conversation? Maybe not. But as we understand the human condition, the reason we are given this, whether you believe in divine creation or you believe in evolution, we have evolved to have this bucket of human emotion. Anger is a signal that something is off, just like sadness is, or joy, or whatever, or fear. It's all part of who we are. Now, when I know that I am completely off center and I'm not grounded, this is not a time for me to have a productive conversation, because I might go into places that aren't productive for this conversation. That whole thing is about how we look at our coping range. And we don't have to get too psychological today. But once you've been on a healing journey, you start to know that about yourself. And you also know that you're better off and will be more prepared when you turn this anger that you're feeling into a place of empowerment. But when somebody tells you that you are angry, you check yourself. Oftentimes that's coming from a place of them trying to control you. And if you're just in the tone that I'm talking to you and talking about this, I will get people like, well, I'm not going to talk to you, because it's a confidence, and it might come off as either aggressive or assertive, because you're not used to hearing a woman speak about empowerment. So when a woman speaks with that kind of confidence from people who aren't used to hearing it, I'll be told I'm arrogant, or I have an anger inside me. You burn with a hostility, and I'm not feeling any of that. I'm feeling like so grounded and empowered and speaking from a place of truth. And when you do that, you feel it. You feel it through your entire body. But they're not used to that. So it's about internalizing and being able to check yourself, and not letting somebody else tone police you to the point where you then are dismissed by somebody else's experience, or somebody else trying to control you. Because especially women our age, all generations are still being impacted by patriarchy. We have had so many narratives placed on us about what a woman's role was, what a responsibility, how are we described and defined, and what our expectations are for our lives. And when we have stepped out of those, we have been corrected so many different times. And I speak a lot about that in my book as well. But I think that is the hardest part about being able to say, I no longer want that narrative on me. And now who am I? Who am I without that narrative of what I've been wearing my entire life? And being able to take those off and then step into your authenticity is exciting. It doesn't matter what age you are to be able to do that.
I'm glad you addressed that. How do you respond to and I hear this in every kind of marginalization throughout history. Well, we don't do that anymore. Well, that was in the past. Look how far we've come. And last year, I interviewed a lady because she actually spoke at this conference that I went to with my husband, which was a faith promoting conference for the Mormon church. And she talked about the joy of, at least in the Mormon church, we believe and teach that we have a mother in heaven. And so isn't that great? And we should celebrate the fact that we believe that there is a mother in heaven. And so I interviewed her and I said, how does it make you feel when you're standing on the same stage with a woman who is in her 70s, who was asked to step down from an organization because she gave a talk on Mother in Heaven and it offended some people? So she was asked to step down from this organization that she belonged to in the church. And then you're on the same stage going, look at all this art that they created. And look, we displayed this art and it was it was Mother in Heaven in all different diverse colors. And look how far we've come. And I'm like, then there was this man who spoke in general conference a couple of months ago and said how we don't speak of our Mother in Heaven. We don't pray to our Mother in Heaven. And we really should stop talking about it because we don't know anything about Mother in Heaven. So just zip, 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 But you, being a 41-year-old, think that we've come so far. Look how far we've come. And it's like, historically, we have not come very far, but you're this new generation that thinks just because you can have artwork displayed in a college, part of the college campus about a mother in heaven, that the church is now like, yes, here we are. We're all here now, you know? So let it go. Just let it go. And it's like, but we lived the time that we were told to come home, that I lived the sitting in a congregation, listening to my male apostle tell me, you have no business working outside of the home. You should not be seeking for a career. Your job is to have children. Your job is to make heaven on earth in a home, so that when everyone returns from their daily responsibilities, they have this peaceful place to come home to that you have created for them. That is your job. Well, they don't say that anymore. Aren't you glad they don't say that anymore? So how do you respond to well, we don't say that anymore, so get over it. That's the hard part about being old, is like, we were in the room. Okay.
Yeah, for sure. And so I don't have the Mormon experience, but when I'm hearing that story, what that tells me is this young person's training is through patriarchy. And the farther away you can get from those seasons of oppression, they are doing a great job of rebranding themselves and not connecting to their past, which I think that's what my video today is about, because what I am seeing a lot of people who are still church talking over the unchurched, as if the priority is to get people back in church, but the ones who are unchurched are a threat. So how do you get to the people who are just thinking and not sure where they're going? And so I kind of laid a claim there to say, no, don't talk over us. We're here too, and we have a right to this space. And it's not to be a churched space. So when it comes to those I think what I'm sensing in those spaces is where those of us who experienced it, we must find our voices. We must be the ones who educate them, but also the younger generations need to have a willingness. Now, I think you're seeing that. Again, I don't know about the Mormon experience, but I think you are seeing that. I'm seeing it in social media, and it could be because that's the silo I'm in activism and deconstructing and Christian nationalism. But because there's this whole thing about making sure that deconstructing is about understanding what privilege religious patriarchy taught you about how you fit into the world and how you're carrying these buckets of water and how many times you dump it on people without even realizing how many times we're trained to walk into the room as the white savior, that we're the smartest person in the room. And those kinds of things, thinking about those elements that we don't even think about, and that I didn't leave the church thinking about. So how I make sure that I'm aware of those spaces. But what that also means is I'm going to take that to like a place of, when we talk about the problems that we still have with systemic racism and sexism and homophobia inside our systems. When people say, well, we now ordain gay clergy, so we're over that. We absolutely are not over that.
Right.
Racism and sexism and homophobia still sit in the church pews. So it's not that we have to just say, well, that ideal is dying out. It isn't. There's still indoctrination inside familial structures, inside education, inside those places that are still dropping those isms inside people. And one of those isms is not an ism, it's ignorance. So when someone gets up and says, oh, well, thank God we're not doing that anymore, when there are thousands of humans that have still been impacted by it, and its connection to the church is still there. The church is not so modern that hasn't come a far way. Last time I checked, I'm not seeing too many women leaders inside the Mormon church. It looks pretty white and it looks pretty male to me. Yes. So how far actually are you away from all of that ideology. And it's the same thing when you look at the skewed leadership of our political arena. If it looked anything like our demographics in America, it would be more women, it would be more Black, and it would be more Hispanics than what it is. But we're still seeing it through a dominant white male culture. But what they've done is be able to sever the history and hide it. And that is pure marketing. That is pure branding. And it sounds like it's working. And that's what's really sad when we say, oh, we don't do that anymore. No, it's hiding behind that church band. It's hiding behind the pastor in jeans. They can modernize it however they want. The toxic theology is still there. And I think it is up to us to call it out, to say, no, we still have to be accountable to the fact that the very church that says they're modernizing still is not going. There's churches out there who have the pastor in jeans aren't going to ordain gay clergy. They're not going to officiate a same-sex marriage, and they're not even going. Some of them are not going to ordain women.
Right.
The theology is still there. So it is about that accountability. So that paintings are harmless, and how many people are going to see it? It's really the education. That's kind of that. Yes, it's something to celebrate, but it's a far cry from actually the huge paradigm shift that the church needs.
Absolutely.
I really love what she was just saying about. No, I lost my train of thought. That it's still there, and this is where we talk about the breadcrumbs.
Yeah.
President Nelson said, "Hey, we're going to give you guys some power. We formed some committees. You guys get to be on this committee." And it's like, who fell for that? Raise your hand if you fell for that. If you honestly think that somehow gave you more power and authority.
Well, and how about we'll just take out some of those offensive things out of the temple ceremony, and then you women will stop. You'll stop this. We'll you don't have to veil your face anymore. We'll just take that out. Never mind that Joseph Smith would be rolling over in his grave if he knew, but not that he did the right thing to begin with.
Yeah.
Okay, with polygamy and all that. Yeah. But it's like these little band-aids, they think that makes it okay. And then the young people come in and they're like, the temple ceremony is a piece of cake. There's nothing sexist about it.
Yeah.
Weird about it.
Jesus was all over the temple. I love how Jesus was.
Yeah, this is the church that we live in. What are you old people complaining about? They're not doing that anymore. But it's like she said, it's systemic in the people that are sitting in the pews.
Yeah. We
were there. We felt that. The leaders, believe me, they remember doing it. And so, because they're like 98 years old or whatever, they've been around and seen all of this. And it didn't just go away. They're just putting little Band-Aids on it to satisfy the women.
Yeah.
They want us to be quiet.
Yeah. It's all marketing, like she said. They're just doing a huge, PR campaign, and so it's like, well, we let that one lady talk about Mother in Heaven, and she's going to do an art display. She just posted something on Facebook that she's curated some more art that's going to be displayed somewhere, and I'm like, who cares? You still can't pray to a heavenly. They still don't acknowledge that they don't talk about Mother in Heaven, because in actuality, they believe in polygamy. There's a bazillion mothers in heaven, and they would have to acknowledge that there's a Mother in Heaven. So they're just trying to market it differently.
Yeah.
And what was really interesting was, like I said, that movie I went to last night where they showed just beautiful man. He was an evangelical pastor, and he talked about his transformation and how he said they had a whole list of theologians' dictionary for if anybody had a question, you would go to this dictionary and you would look up the words, you would get the understanding. And he said, all the years I was an evangelical pastor, I never noticed at the bottom who wrote these books. And it was, I want to say, I shouldn't even say, I'll look it up. But he was a German theologian that worked with Hitler. He was the one that gave Hitler all of the information that he needed. And he said, I had no idea. And yet I was teaching out of those books. And, It's just marketing.
Yeah.
It's,
And isn't it interesting? Like if they can just rebrand and do
Yeah.
it in a way that makes everyone feel warm and cozy and fuzzy, then we're good.
yeah, then everybody's happy.
Really changed in the
Yeah.
theology. Nothing's
No.
going to change. They still believe in polygamy.
Yep.
Got their wives up in heaven. You know, ask the two top leaders. Nelson and Oakes both have 2 wives.
Yeah. And you know what someone pointed out the other day, which I didn't even think of? They're both virgins.
Oh,
They
yeah.
were, and I thought, holy moly, I never thought about that. But it's like, oh my gosh, section 132, you got yourself a virgin, a 50-year-old virgin. But, you know, it's like, wow. Because
It's gross.
at first you just think, well, they didn't want other children or whatever. And then I'm like,
No.
when someone pointed that out, it was like, oh gosh.
Another,
You know,
another wave of
yeah.
living in this
Ugh.
gross church. How did I not see this?
I know.
Yeah, it's just it's levels, so many levels of deconstruction, right?
Yeah.
It's happening.
I know. It's absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
my goodness.
so let's finish off by talking about the book that you have coming out.
Where you end up is different for each person. I don't proselytize that, and I don't proselytize it in the book. So you're not going to read a lot about what I believe and where I am, because I don't believe that that's my responsibility. What's my responsibility is to help you understand that there's a reason that you're questioning your faith and your religious experiences. And here's some ways that I can help you understand what you're going through. So I have a section where we're talking about deconstructing. Then I have a section where I'm talking about restoring. And that's really about looking at, do you have religious trauma? And trauma is often intermixed. And how is that still impacting our lives and the filter through which we see our experience? I talk about soul work and the importance of making sure that you are taking responsibility for how you're showing up in the world. In other words, when people offer you a mirror about something that may be something we're carrying that limits our capacity for compassion and empathy, and we instead knock the mirror out repeatedly, that might be a cue that there are some wounds that we're holding on to. I talk about integrating the true self and silencing the ego. So I do go into the mystical a little bit with this. So the first part's deconstructing. The second part is restoring that foundation for not just your spiritual growth, but your emotional well-being. And then the last part is about reconstructing. And I'm sorry, those words are where we are. And that's where I talk about ways that you can bring elements of practical spirituality. And how do you find holy in your everyday if being unchurched is your journey, or where you can start to look for a spiritual community. I talk about how you can look at Jesus with a new set of eyes. You don't have to, what do you do about Jesus when you're deconstructing? I mean, that was a hard one for me. How do I look at the Bible differently? I mean, it's just like, how am I rejecting the core elements of my identity, not just what I believe, but my identity, and who am I if I'm not what the Bible says I am, or what I believed about Jesus. And then understanding that I didn't have to throw that out. I could reconnect with a different heart and a different set of eyes that not only that has nothing to do with a belief system. So there's a lot of information there, lots of resources, a whole glossary of things that I use. So I think I'm excited about it. It's we go into pre-order, I think next week. I can't keep dates straight.
Okay, that's what I was just going to ask, is if you can pre-order it, and then you think that it will be released. Let's see, it's almost March. When do you think it'll be released?
It'll be released late summer, early fall.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's so exciting. That's so exciting. And then the most exciting part is that you're going to kind of go on a book tour, right?
Yeah.
You're going to, yes.
I am. I'm very excited about that. And I will be reaching out to people to say, hey, would you like to help me So I'll be back in touch with you. There
Yeah.
might be a place where I can have a signing, a book signing, and a talk in your area. I will be traveling the country. I know my publisher is putting together some stuff for that right now. So yeah,
amazing.
I'll be on a big book tour. I'm excited about it.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited about it too, because I think that there is, it's interesting in the Mormon church, you have a lot of life coaches. And a lot of these women, their clientele are either ex-Mormon women or women who want to deconstruct, but they're still in that fear stage where I don't want to upset my husband. I don't want to upset my children, my mother. We're 7th-generation Mormon pioneers, and I don't want to be the one that messed up the thing. And then you've got a little bit of that voice in the back of their heads that are like, you're the one that pulled the thread, and now generations after you will be all in hell because of what you've done.
Yeah.
So there's that indoctrination. So they're literally going to life coaches, into therapy, to figure out, because they're so depressed and they don't have a journey. They're just lost. They're just lost because they don't know how to deconstruct. And maybe still, like you say, keep a faith in some kind of spirituality, if it's a belief in Jesus or whatever. And they're afraid of losing the community, because that is big in the LDS church, is the community. And they're afraid they're going to lose that. And then what will I do? And who will I be? And what am I? And they've lost their identity, and especially if they've held positions of authority. So it's just amazing. So I love that your book. I'm going to fast forward this a little bit. I'm actually going to give some more information. But I just want you to know that Facebook has all of your data already. So you don't have to worry about TikTok.
They do.
It's like they've already grabbed all your information. They've bugged your home. Yeah, I was just saying that guest that I have on, and I'm going to get out of there. So yeah. So I was just saying how a lot of people in my baby boomer age group, there's been so much stuff politically even against TikTok that they're just sure that, the Chinese are bugging your home because you're on TikTok. And I'm like, oh, honey, you're on Facebook. They've already got all your data.
Yeah.
What was really scary was last night in this movie, this guy has a multi-million-dollar evangelical movement, Faith in America, I think it was called. And he came out and said, we did a poll. We found people, we tracked what you bought, what you read, where you were at, what you were wearing, what car you drove, what cereal you ate. We tracked all of that. And then he said, and then we did a poll. And so, I mean, as he was listing off the things that he did through this marketing thing, then he just said, so we knew who you were going to vote for. We knew how to market to you. We started making phone calls. And sure enough, 84% of these people voted for Trump. But when he was listing off the things that they were following, what you ate, what you wore, where you went on Saturday night, it was like, oh, honey,
you know all of this.
Yeah, TikTok is nothing. They've already got you. Google got you. You look up something on Google, they got you.
It's true.
So that's what we're talking about. So I'm excited for her to come out and her book tour. And I just told her I'd help her carry books out of the back of the station wagon. So we'll see.
I know.
But,
that was good too.
Yeah. But, I want to show you just how profound she is. I'm going to show you one more clip. This is one of her latest TikToks. And she's just, if she had a church, I would go to it. She has a Sunday morning thing, I think, on TikTok. But I like, did you ever go to another church after you deconstructed?
No.
Yeah.
No, I was like over religion completely.
Yeah. I kind of went I thought, well, what am I going to do on Sundays? Maybe I'll go to this nice Methodist church I found in Fountain Hills, because they were very inclusive and very LGBTQ plus affirming. And so I went there, and they were very nice. But I thought, I can't. I don't know, and I don't want to start something. And I'm not really as faithful as Dr. or Reverend Carla is, as far as her faith in Jesus as the Son of God. So I was like, I'm over that, so I can't listen to that. Yeah. And then I went to one other one, this for a big church, not quite a mega church, but almost a mega church.
And I told my husband, I said, I'm too lazy. These people stand the whole freaking.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, why do I have to stand up? I'm tired. I don't want to stand up. So let me just show you this last amazing
I've
thing.
been trying to tell you repeatedly that no one except the white Christian man is safe under Christian nationalism. So it is not surprising about what is happening in Alabama. But let's talk about it. The state Supreme Court in Alabama ruled that embryos are children. And now a second Alabama health provider has announced that they will stop providing IVF treatments. This has been the plan all along. You can find this article at catholicscomehome.org. It's an interesting read. But wait a minute, there's more. You can find this article on the Heritage Foundation's website, where the writer is clearly making a case for Christians to oppose IVF treatments. It even quotes Albert Mohler, who is the president of the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary. And it says, quote, Christian couples should not embrace the new reproductive technologies without clear biblical theological reflection. At a bare minimum, Christian couples must commit to the implantation of all embryos. This is about making more white Christian babies. At the end of this article, she writes, it's high time for Protestant denominations to take a firm and authoritative stance on reproductive technology. Every day, they're showing us more and more what America is going to look like under their control. And it is very concerning and very scary. Because under this form of authoritarianism, the only person who will be safe is the white Christian man. Stay awake, use your voice, and vote. We have been trying to tell you.
Is that not amazing?
Yeah.
Is she not amazing?
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah. So I hope, I mean, the whole purpose is really to introduce her to the world. And I think it's so important for people that have left the Mormon church, you know, like we talked about, I was able to go right into Thrive and Mormon Stories and Mormon Expressions, and Bryce Blankenagel's post. I mean, all of these historical, you know, Lindsay Hansen Park.
Mm-hmm.
When I left the church, I was able to go into these things.
Yeah, we had all those available.
Right. But there's so many people that didn't. And like my guest last week, Amy, but now it's like, you also need to understand that you're not alone in the world,
right?
That there's other people leaving evangelical churches that are just as lost. They're being just as shunned by their family. It's not just a Mormon thing. It's a Christian against Christian. It really is dangerous, like what she was saying.
Yeah. Well, especially when it becomes political. So I guess
Yeah.
that's what we're talking about, the Christian
Yeah.
nationalism.
Yeah.
How it can control what we can and cannot do with our own bodies.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's scary. It's like, you know, the fear of the left being, you know, Marxism and all of that. And then you go to the far right and it's no better.
No.
So you've got the two extremes are scary, scary, scary.
Yeah.
I feel like for me, I feel much more moderate. I would lean towards the left, but I'm more moderate than I ever was. I was always a straight up Republican as a member of the church.
Yeah.
But once I left, I deconstructed so many things. And I feel like when I did that, see, she mentions the fear of losing her identity.
Mm-hmm.
Because who she is this biblical scholar and Christian woman. And she doesn't want to lose that.
Right.
I didn't have that fear. I thought, no, I get to choose who I am.
Yeah.
He's going to dictate that for me.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think once and this is how I do it. I don't know. Everyone has their own path, of course. And she's got hers, but she has a very helpful one for so many people that wouldn't be able to go the full length that I did, where it was like, I own the choice of who I am.
Yeah.
No institution and certainly no man is going to dictate that to me. It's my choice. And I am what is the word? Disengaging, disavowing all of the things that I was taught my whole life up until 57. That's when I finally left. I am dropping that all at the side and choosing my path forward. And no one's going to affect that. No religion, no person, no guru. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's so many people that go for, I've got to have a guru. Like, what to do with myself. I don't know where to go.
Yeah.
Where will you go? That's what the brethren say, right?
Exactly.
And my answer is anywhere I want.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
So,
I love that you said that, because there is a tendency, and I know other people have talked about this too, where because we're so used to this, we want to jump from one cult into another cult.
Yeah.
And well, maybe there's a Methodist church out there that I could find, or maybe there's a yoga class that I can take that'll give me that same spiritual feeling. And maybe I need to start doing breath work and all that stuff, which is great. That's all fine. But that again, is that authentic for you?
Yeah.
Or is that a new program that you think you also need to belong to?
Because you feel lost.
Yeah. And you like the sisterhood, you're like the community, you're getting into another community. And that was the thing. I am determined, hopefully in 2024, if not 2025, I want to organize a retreat for women that does not involve trauma bonding, does not involve yoga, does not involve breath work. It just involves laughter, gossip, brownies, and hiking, and just happy time, just a happy thing. Every retreat I've tried to get involved in, the women, their stories are so sad. And I'm glad that there's something out there for them. Horrific story, beautiful. The one I went to in Telluride, the most beautiful, accomplished women. And then they told their story and blew my mind. I'm like, oh my gosh, and so it's like, I don't want any more trauma for a while. I want to just go and get together with some people and go, let's go for a walk, then let's go eat, and then let's come back and just talk about Housewives of Orange County. I don't know.
Anything light and not too heavy.
Exactly.
But there's always these energy healing retreats or like yoga retreats or whatever. And I know that speaks to some people. We're not all the same.
Yes, no, and that's it. I'm glad that it's out there, but it just seems like that's all that's out there.
I know.
And
I feel like I think that there's something else for me, and it's not that. It's just, I can commune with my own spirituality literally by taking a walk.
Yes,
like just a walk outside.
Well, especially where you live and where I live, nature is so available.
The mountains and everything are beautiful.
Yeah.
Or I get on my computer and I do some art. Like that's my field, that I am in, and I can that just is my Zen place. I play music, whatever. Listen to a podcast. That's all I need. I don't want a giant church to go to. No. Where there's men involved and they are in charge.
Exactly. That's the big thing. There's still a big guy up there in charge. So absolutely.
So
Well, thank you. Thanks for joining me today, Lila. And
my pleasure. It's wonderful.
So fun to introduce you. And you've got to just start following her. You'll be as hooked as I am. And I hope everyone else will find the same.
Yeah. Thanks, Renee.
All right. Go do some more fabulous fabrics.
Okay. I'll do it.
Bye. Oh my gosh. So really, it is such a joy for me to introduce you to Reverend Carla. And she is so profound. You've got to follow her on TikTok. And I think she's on Instagram. I mean, as much, because it is repurposed immediately. But I have to show you all these guys with their silly DC comics and Marvel comics. I'm like, I have to show you my t-shirt. Assuming I'm just an old lady was your first mistake. See, that's my t-shirt, Dan McClellan. So we girls can have t-shirts too. We don't all have to have Superman, Batman, and I don't know, Ninja Turtles. I don't know who all they've got on their t-shirts. But anyway, so thanks for listening today. And I have another strong voice, a beautiful woman. I know I've been talking to you guys about Allie Henny, but she's going to be on next week. She wrote a book, You Can't Shut Me Up, or I Won't Shut Up, or something like that. I think is I Won't Shut Up. And there we see, we're just all joining in with her. So she's going to have some more enlightening stories to tell us. So join me next week on She Became Visible 513 YouTube at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. Thanks for joining me today. And don't forget to subscribe and share and like and push the notification button. So it's just what you got to do. It's just click. That's all you have to do. Not even asking you for a donation. Just subscribe, like, and share. So have a great day. All right. Bye-bye. Thank you for joining me today on She Became Visible. Join me each week as my guests and I explore the path of womanhood and tell all our stories. We'll talk about finding the courage to be ourselves and motivate each other to be everything that we're capable of and meant to be, no matter what happens around us. Please like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget to donate at shebecamevisible.com.